Hi, my name is Cassie Sharp, and today we will be talking about B.F. Skinner and operant conditioning. So, B.F. Skinner was an American psychologist who did most of his work in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and he studied observable behavior. So, in the simplest of terms, operant conditioning is using reinforcement to get a behavior to occur. And behavior can either be reinforced, which means that it's repeated or strengthened, or it cannot be reinforced, which means that over time it'll become extinguished or weakened and it will stop happening. B.F. Skinner, this is a picture of his or a model of his Skinner box with the rats, when basically they could touch a lever to get like a food pellet to come out, and he studied how it long it took them, and when they realized that they could touch this lever and get food and be reinforced. So beyond reinforcement and punishment, there's another element to be added in to get the whole operant conditioning idea. And that is the idea that reinforcement can be positive or negative, and punishment can be positive or negative. And it's very important to think of positive and negative not as how most people typically think of positive and negative, and that's, positive is a good thing and negative is a bad thing. That's not the way they work in operant conditioning. In operant conditioning, something positive means that there is an addition to the environment, something is added or given. And negative means that something is taken away or removed from the environment. So with all of these different types, it can get very confusing, and you have to think about exactly the response that you're getting and that you're trying to, and the behavior you're trying to make happen. So think of positive and negative in that way if you can while I explain this. I have given 4 examples, and they are each closest to the box in the picture. So we'll start with positive reinforcement, and this is the phrase that most people hear probably more often than the other 3, and probably the easiest to understand. In a positive reinforcement, because it's positive, if we're thinking about students, they are given something. So, for example, they are given a piece of candy because they were good. They are given candy because we want that good behavior to increase and to stay. So we are trying to increase the behavior by giving something. That's positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement would be getting a bad grade for forgetting your homework. Something is being taken away, that good grade is being taken away, your grade is going down, and in the hopes that we will reinforce the behavior of bringing your homework every day. Positive punishment. My example here was a detention slip. You are giving the student something. They have to go to detention now. There is something being added to the environment, and it is a punishment. You are trying to decrease the bad behavior that caused them to get the detention slip. So that is a positive punishment. And again, like I said earlier, that's where it gets confusing, because detention is not ever associated with the word positive. But it's a physical addition to the environment to decrease the bad behavior. And then finally, a negative punishment is, my example was that a student yells at another student in class, and so maybe the teacher takes away some sort of reward to punish that student. So something is removed in order to decrease that bad behavior. She wants the student to stop yelling, so she takes something away. So those are just a few examples, and we'll talk about some more, but there are so many ways that positive and negative reinforcement and positive negative punishment can come up in the classroom, and it probably does all the time without us even realizing it. So the last kind of part of the equation of operant conditioning is how often you reinforce or punish. And this is probably the most important part, because without it, the actual doing of the reinforcing or punishing doesn't really matter. This is very important to get the results you want. So Skinner thought there were 4 types of schedules of reinforcement. The first is fixed ratio, which is a response is reinforced after a set number of responses. So you might say, okay, students, I'm going to give you a reward after you do this 3 different times. If you can not blurt out 3 different times while your hand is raised, then you will get a reward. That's just a set number of responses, and it usually gives a high response, and then it's reinforced with that. Let's say it's candy. And then after the reinforcement, it sometimes drops off a little bit, but quickly, resumes soon after. So there are always dips in schedules of reinforcement, but with fixed ratio, it might go down a little bit, but it comes right back up. Skinner thought this was good for learning new behaviors in a classroom. Variable ratio schedules are random. There's no set number. And this creates the best response to get the behavior you want. And the examples of this are playing the lottery or gambling, using slot machines. You play these because when it pays off, it really pays off. You are reinforced, and so you keep playing. That's your response. Your response is up a lot because you want it to pay off again, but you don't know when that will happen. It's random. Fixed interval is when you are reinforced after a set amount of time. So this is different from fixed ratio, just in that instead of a certain amount of responses, certain type of thing you're looking for, a number, you are using time. So maybe every week there is some sort of reward. An example given a lot for a fixed interval is payday. Most people are paid every 2 weeks, and so your payoff is that 2 weeks, and you are immediately reinforced, and then over time, the response goes back down until you get back up closer to payday. And that's kind of confusing, and if you think about it in a classroom, imagine that you might give students extra recess time on Friday if they have good behavior during the week. So when they get that extra recess time on Friday, they are reinforced, they are pumped up, they know they've done good behavior, and they are excited to keep doing good behavior so that they can get that extra recess next Friday. So that's up, the response is high, and then Monday rolls around and maybe their behavior isn't so good. The response is not high. There's not as much good behavior. And maybe it's a little bit better Tuesday, but not really. Until Wednesday or Thursday come around, they are closer to time of when they're going to be reinforced, when they need to get that extra recess, and that's when the response goes up. That's when the behavior is better. So with set amounts of times, your response goes up close to the payoff, and then it dips back down. So you're kind of doing a wave there. And then finally, with variable interval schedules, you're reinforced after an unpredictable amount of time. So again, it's random, not a set number, but here it's not a set amount of time. A good example is this is an unpredictable drop-in by the principal. If your principal drops in, we can't lie, that can be a little bit nerve-wracking to be watched, and maybe you're nervous and you want to try your best to show her that you're a good teacher. Well, him or her that you're a good teacher. Well, if you know that it's possible that at any time, and it's unpredictable, that principal could come in, you're probably going to be a bit more on your A game. Hopefully you are all the time, but you could be a little bit more nervous about being on your A game in case your principal drops in. So there is often a slow response at first, but once you know this is happening and it's unpredictable, and that you could be reinforced, it could happen to you at any time, you are much less likely to become extinct, which means the behavior is gone forever. So in the 2 variable type of schedules, when it's unpredictable and it's random, in those type of schedules, when you're reinforcing, there is a smaller chance of extinction. That behavior is less likely to just go away. However, in the ratio and the fixed schedules, when it's set, you might get a higher response. So you might get the response you're looking for more often, but it could eventually fade away. So there's pros and cons of all the schedules, and it definitely depends on the situation and the exact behavior you're trying to get and who or what you're trying to get the behavior from. But these have a lot to do with how the behavior happens. So some more examples specifically for teaching and for the classroom of operant conditioning. If we're looking at positive reinforcement in the classroom, these can come in so many different ways. They can be as small as a smile when a child does something good, or it can be much, much bigger. So they happen, again, I know I've said this, but they happen all the time, even without us realizing it. They can come in the form of compliments or encouragement. You can reward good behavior instead of punishing bad. When you are giving good grades, you are giving positive reinforcement. A lot of teachers use what is called a token economy. You are giving something in order for the students then to get a reward. Examples of this are sticker charts or compliment jars. You know, if another teacher in the hallway says, "Wow, your class is standing so still and they are doing so great in the hallway, I don't hear a peep," the teacher might let a student put a token in a jar, and once the jar is filled up, they get a party or something like that. In my classroom, I've used a sticker chart to reward good behavior, and if at the end of a small group session they have received more points than I have, which again, when the students are receiving points, that's positive reinforcement. They get a sticker for that day, and then after 3 days, it's fixed. After 3 days, they get a reward from the treasure box. This is, again, of course, for some of my younger students, but I definitely use the token economy in my classroom and think it works wonderfully. As far as negative reinforcement goes, again, negative, something's taken away because you want a certain behavior to increase. So it might be that recess time is taken away to get better behavior out of the kids. It might be that, teachers might be grumpy or be mean or say, "I'm not happy with you," and so the normal teacher's gone and you have a mad teacher, and you are trying to get them to stop bad behavior and improve behavior and change that. So that's negative reinforcement as well. So on the punishment side of things, positive punishment, which would be presenting something into the environment to decrease the behavior, that could be scolding or yelling at a child to stop them from doing something they're doing, a certain behavior. It could be giving a detention or giving an office referral or sending them to SAFE. Something is happening in order to decrease a bad behavior. For negative punishment, something is taken away or removed from the environment in order to decrease that behavior. So a student might be placed in timeout. A lot of teachers use there's a million ways to do the clip system or turning the dials from green to red or green to yellow to red, and I've seen rainbows. There's so many ways to do that. So you might be lessening a student's status on the clip chart. That's a negative punishment. Taking away something that a student's playing with, or for older kids, a cell phone, that's negative punishment as well. So I included this next slide because I thought it was cute, this cartoon. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to read it and try to figure out what kind of reinforcement or punishment it is. So if you realize that it's positive punishment, you're correct. The teachers obviously wants the child to stop throwing spitballs, decrease the behavior by presenting him a positive with a trip to the principal's office. In all of this, with B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning, no matter the system you set up in your classroom, in some way or another, you are using operant conditioning. Even if it's not in your classroom management system, I don't know how it couldn't be, but it is. You're doing that in other ways during class. So it's important to think about how you're presenting those and the schedule you're putting those on, and how that can affect the behaviors you're trying to get out of your students. So here are my references. Thank you for listening.